Yes, good evening, everyone, and welcome to another edition of School Council Opportunities for Progress and Enrichment. This is part of an ongoing series of training for school council and parents and caregivers. Tonight's presentation is on leading in effective engagement. Okay, so we're going to start off with the land acknowledgement. The land we are meeting on is the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Chippewa, uh, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anasazic, the Chippewa, and Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples, and is now home to many diverse nations, First Nations, Inuit, and Métis peoples. I also acknowledge that Toronto is covered by Treaty 13, signed with the Mississaugas of the Credit, and the Williams Treaty, signed with multiple Mississaugas and Chippewa bands. Tonight's presentation will be recorded. We are going to be doing a Q&A at the end. And we had done a presentation a few weeks ago on Beyond Fundraising. And because that we had personal information in that, it's just taking a longer period to redact that information, but we will have it out to you. But this one will be coming out immediately. Okay. Again, this is the presentation on leading effective engagement. My name is Ricardo Francis. I'm with the Parent Caregiver Community Engagement Office. I do everything. I'm this school council and community liaison lead. And I'd just like to introduce my colleague, or do you want me, or you want to
Hi,
introduce yourself? Go ahead.
sure. Hi, I'm Nancy Angevine Sands. I'm a parent and caregiver engagement consultant. I have through With Equal Step. I'm a vendor with the board, and for the last few years, I've been liaising with the PCCEO to help support school councils.
Okay. Okay, so one of the things that we always speak about in our presentations, the multi-year strategic plan, because this is the foundation as to what we do. It gives us guidance as to what the expectations are for staff and for school councils. And so I just hope that all of you get familiarize yourself with this. If you can't find it, you can always go to our TDSB school council site. You just Google TDSB school council and our webpage will come up. Okay, now we'll
Okay, so
begin.
we're going to start by looking at a little bit at where school councils have started and what the effect is, both good and maybe not so good. So, next. The traditional definitions of parent engagement have been very school centric rather than parent and caregiver centric. They've evolved, as many of you know, revolved around fundraising, volunteering, communications from the school, making sure that parents help their kids with homework, and school councils or PTAs or whatever they've been called. But it's really been about these parent groups doing for the school rather than doing for the needs of the parents and caregivers. Next. So the traditional definition of engagement, therefore, this, and I'm talking for like the last 50, 60 years, has been based on studies of white middle class parents, caregivers, and how they have done their work, as I mentioned in the top left hand, how they've done their work for the school. Next. The result of this, as Dr. Anne Nishimaro says, is that this contributes to a very alienating environment for working class families and families of color. Next. So that then leads to what I call the myth of the hard to reach. I'm sure you've all heard, oh, yeah, oh, they're hard to reach. But really, Is it the parents and caregivers who are hard to reach, or is it the school and the school council that is hard to reach? By calling these parents that are either economically marginalized or families of color, the result is that it devalues the way that marginalized parents and caregivers engage. And the benefits that come from school council work then tend to benefit the dominant or white-centric parents and caregivers that have traditionally made up our parent caregiver governing bodies. Next. The result of that is that the families that have historically been positioned as hard to reach, this by saying to them, oh, well, they're hard to reach, they don't really care, they don't know, it ignores the broader systemic inequities that we find in school boards everywhere. And those systemic inequities can be racial disproportionality in discipline and special education for our students, and vast disparities in the achievement and graduation rates of those hard to reach students and families. Next. But what I'm asking you to do is, in considering this, is how can you maybe switch the traditional way of looking at things and disrupt this narrative of hard to reach? Because we know from research that has been coming out in the last couple decades that BIPOC parents and caregivers are engaged in their children's education. It's just that their engagement is often in the home rather than coming to the school to do the school things. And when BIPOC families are involved at the school, it's what we found. Dr. Jada Moultrie, who is a researcher, professor out in Western U.S., found that when BIPOC parents and caregivers do engage in the school, that it's quite often for their way of protecting their children from racist practice and microaggressions. Dr. Max Antony, who is a researcher, he's currently based in Glasgow, but he's from Toronto via Ukraine. He's done a lot of research into families and newcomer families. And what he found is sometimes the difference in the family's view of curriculum orientations, how curriculum is presented, and engagement is when what they're used to, how curriculum is presented and the way it's presented in our schools, or what they view as engagement and what has traditionally been viewed as engagement, when they come into conflict with each other, then they just say, okay, fine, I'm going to engage at home. This doesn't mean that they're hard to reach. What it means is, as I've said, that perhaps the school and the school council are hard to reach. Next. So how do we help to improve this? Well, it begins with relationships. Engagement, effective, meaningful engagement always begins with relationships. And relationships begin with trust. You know that in your personal lives. When you meet someone and you start to build a relationship, unless you trust them, that relationship is going nowhere. So as school councils, we need to work to build mutual trust and respect, going out and coming back, to make sure that the parents and caregivers who come to our meetings or who that we approach feel comfortable, and that we are comfortable with their many ways of knowing and being. As I've said, that we become comfortable with how they feel about things so that they can understand how we feel, that we share our experiences with each other, and that we work to be authentic with each other. Next. Dr. Constantino, who is an engagement specialist in the States, he says that parents engage when the information, the organization, or the situation is meaningful and relevant to them. So let me give you an example. I remember in a paper that Max wrote, he said that when speaking with Eastern European immigrant families, they didn't understand the school-centric ideas of school council. And they would say to him, I don't understand how buying a cupcake at the bake sale is going to help my child do better in mathematics. The situations weren't meaningful to them. And so we have to look at how can we find out what are our parents looking for support, and how can we offer that to them. Next. So if relationships begin with trust, they also begin with communication. And this is where you can begin your work and continue your work throughout the year. Is your communication with your parents and caregivers two ways? Or are you just sending stuff out and have no way for them to respond back? Because if you're just sending stuff out, it's a monologue, it's not a dialogue. There must always be a way of corresponding with them. If you have the TDSB email address and you can send messages out on School Messenger, great. But you have to include your email address so that they can reply back to you. They can't reply back through School Messenger, but they can reply back through your email address. Make sure that your communications are respectful and that they're simple. No edubabble. No education is filled with words that if you're not in the education field, you don't really understand them. Translate them into normal language. Invite, invite, invite. Just because you invite somebody one time and they don't come out doesn't mean they shouldn't be invited again and again. There may be really good reasons why they don't come out. They may have a second job or first job, an evening job that they're working at. They may be having trouble with their kids. They may not feel that comfortable and they need to be encouraged. Make sure the work that you do is mutually beneficial, that you're helping them and they're helping you. And ensure that your communication is cross-cultural by using translation and interpretation. Next. It's really important, too, that we have good communication with our principals. And this is important for those of you this evening who are chairs and vice chairs. Next. So sometimes it's up to us as council people to begin the open, respectful relationship with our principals, to begin the communication, to begin letting them see that collaboration really will work for the school. So asking them, how do you want to receive communications from me? Do you want an email? Do you want a text? Do you want me to put a note in your inbox? And what's a reasonable time frame if I write you about something to hear back? And have you established regular meeting times? And this is really, really important for the chairs, co-chairs, chairs, vice chairs to have a meeting with your principal a week or two before the next school council meeting, just to keep up on what you've heard and what they've heard and what's on the agenda and how's it going to roll out. And also, what procedure would be best if you become aware, or any parent member of your council becomes aware of an urgent issue? What's the best way to deal with it? The best procedure to come to you, to the principal? How can you share your information in the best way? Next. Next. It's also important to lead communication with school council members. So do council members know how, if you're the chair, do the council members know how to contact you? Do they know how to contact each other? Have you made up a contact list of everybody's names and addresses and shared them with the council? And do they know you're sharing them? And do they feel comfortable bringing issues and ideas to you as the chair? And if you're a council member, do you feel comfortable going to your chair or co-chair, vice chair with an issue that you've heard, or ideas that you have, or that you've heard on the school playground, or in the hallways or at an event? What's the best method to contact each other? And again, what's the time frame for a response? Listen, clarify, allow for feeling discomfort when you hear something. Be open to what you hear. Acknowledge, yeah, I don't like that, but let's listen. Let's try to understand. And as a chair or co-chair, It's really incumbent upon each of us to ensure that our school council members feel valued and respected. I think there's one more thing there, Ricardo, next, that take the time to say thank you to them for their work. And then maybe they'll say thank you to you back. And then finally, leading communications with the parents and caregivers in the school. We need to know as a school council who belongs in our community and what organizations and networks exist beyond the walls of the school. Who are the leaders both in our further community and who are the leaders within our school? We know when my kids were in school, you always knew there were a few parents that the other parents would go to, that maybe they knew from sports or their center of worship or there was a neighbor. Make friends with them because they can help you spread the word. Who do you as a council send information to, and who does the school send information to? Because you can provide good advice to the school on their communication practices. And do you have a way to communicate with your broader community? Is your communication satisfying the diverse needs of your community? And have you asked the members of your community and also the members of your council what they need to know to be effective parents and help their kids to achieve, which is the primary purpose of school councils? Next. So Shane Shafir, who's a teacher and a writer in the States, she talks about going to the margins. What she's talking about is those people that we have traditionally called hard to reach. The ones that we see maybe bringing their kids to school or picking them up, but we never see them in the school. We have to go to them. We have to make sure that we aren't hard to reach. Next. So a few things to consider. How is race, class, language, ability, nationality, and education represented in the school council meetings and in decision making? If everybody sitting around the table looks the same, feels the same, thinks the same, are you able to respond to the diverse needs of your community? Next. Who's here? Who's sitting at our table? But more importantly, who's missing? Why are they missing? Which voices are we hearing? And whose are silent, or more importantly, have been silenced? And what needs to change? Next. Don't exclude or ostracize people for raising concerns. Take the time to listen and to reflect on their concerns before responding. Think. Try to feel what they're saying, to hear what they're saying. Next. And choose events that come from and reflect the ideas, the traditions, the cultures, and the strengths of the parents and caregivers represented at your school. It's really hard to represent everybody, but we need to do more than represent a few. I've told this story before in other webinars, and I'll say it again because I think it's worth repeating. I remember reading about a teacher, a principal at a school. It was in an economically struggling community, very racially diverse, and she tried everything. She sent stuff out. She had events. She tried everything, but there was a certain group of people, and they just weren't showing up, and she didn't know why. She could see them out her window. They would walk their kids to school, but they would stop about a block away. They would drop the kids off and let the kids come to the school. At the end of the day, they'd be there, but they would never come any closer. So one day she went outside. She went to them and she said, "Look, hi, I'm the principal. How are you? Listen, can you help me to understand? I've been inviting people. I've been inviting you to come. I noticed that you never come to the school. Is there a reason for that?" And they looked at her and they said, "You know what? We went to this school. We grew up in this community. Our time in that school was the worst time of our life. It was terrible and they told her the multitude of reasons why. And they said, when we left, we swore we would never go back through those doors again. Even though our kids have to go to the school because we still live here, we won't go through those doors again. She had to listen to that and hear that and try to work with them so that they would feel comfortable coming back and being a part of the school and help so that the school could help them in what they needed. Next.
Okay. So before I begin my portion of the presentation, I just want to remind everybody that there's a Q&A and you can just that we'll be answering at the end. So question and answer, just put your questions in the Q&A and we'll respond at the end. We're just gonna now take a little deeper dive into what Nancy's already shared. And one of the things is communication is a big thing. And I'm just gonna read this quote as the single biggest problem in communication is the illusion that is taken place. And sometimes we believe we've shared information, but it's not getting there. And now we're going to speak to how we can get our message out. So we talked about leading in the community, what and actually this looks like. So one of the things that I'm just going to speak to a quote. With all that is negative around us, we can start the change by doing positive, intentionally mindful work in our schools while embracing, supporting, and leaning on our neighbors. And how would this look like? So it's about building trust, being very transparent, having partnerships between principals, home, and school, setting realistic expectation, helping parents and caregivers understand student needs and progress, boosting that parent caregiver commitment, and which is huge because I know as a school council, one of the things that school councils struggle with is having that involvement, having those volunteers help them doing that. So it's about really encouraging active support for parent and student learning. And that sometimes is just reaching out, as Nancy spoke to earlier, out to the community, going out to the schoolyard, going to parent conferences, going to Welcome to Kindy, and introducing yourself, using various platforms to get your message out as to what you're doing, what your needs are in terms of help, and really explain what that commitment that you're looking for, whether it's an hour, 2 hours, or sometime in the evening, sometime in the morning, just really making it clear to those people so they have a better understanding of what the ask is. And the other thing is creating a welcoming environment and just making parents feel included, valued, and connected. Now we're going to talk about funds of knowledge, and this is a huge component. We talk about a lot of times about the expertise in the school and from the staff and everyone else in the school, but we also got to recognize our parents and caregivers for what they bring to the table. And I'm just going to do another quote for you. School councils are about knowing, building, and enriching what's within in service of nurturing and nourishing what's without. So how this looks is by recognizing those strengths and those skills of the parents and caregivers in your school, acknowledging their experiences and cultural practices, collaborating with collaborative engagement, which looks like hosting events to share traditions, expertise, and community resources, and tailored communication. And this is by using multiple languages, multiple platforms like WhatsApp, the school council webpage, and culturally aware presentation. As I say WhatsApp, I'm just going to also encourage that you have somebody that monitors what's being put on your platform. And the other thing is the co-design initiatives. Partner on project support supporting various issues like equity, anti-racism, gender bias, and mental health. And the big thing for me is also continuous learning. And this is for both training for both parents and students, and to participate in training and adapt practices, our practices as school council members to meet community needs. And in all of this, your principal is available to guide and support. Okay, so I was at the Parent Involvement Advisory Committee meeting this Saturday. Uh, I'd like to acknowledge all of you that attended that. It was just a wonderful opportunity. I learned a lot, and I actually went to the presentation held by Crystal Stewart, who is part of the PAC School Council Working Group. And what I learned there is that a number of parents aren't aware that there's an end of year report to be done. So here's that's about. So it's a summary of activities. So it's all that you've done in regards to parent engagement, workshops, info and training sessions, speakers nights, and it's about what you did in terms of community building. That would be your cultural celebration, your parent and social events. It's also about fundraising, funds used for resources, programs, and learning spaces. And it's also about what you did in terms of consultation, input on policies and school improvement, shared community feedback, and finally, and not finally, because there's other things that also could be included in this, is support for school goals. So that's your school council's contribution to technologies, literacy, and well-being, and inclusive climate initiatives. Okay, switch. Okay, and then as part of the end of year report, there is an aspect that's usually managed by your treasurer, and this is the financial um, and reporting. And so this is due April 15th, and it's reporting from August 1st to 31st. And also, you have another reporting that's due September 15th of the following year, and that's a period from August 1st to July 31st. All this information, if you go to Google TDSB School Council, is available on our website, and shows you what is required. I see somebody raise their hand, but we will be taking questions in the Q&A at the end. Thank you. Next. So finally, Nancy spoke about this earlier in terms of leading that communication. And one of the things is we have the TDSB emails. Now we have a school council email. It's SC, whatever your school is, Portage Trail, Hilltop, or whatever the name of your school is. And this is a communication that is to send out to all your school councils when you're communicating with the school council membership, and also as parents and caregivers. The other reason you want to use this is in terms of the succession planning, you have this information so that individuals could go back and see what has been done, what sort of communications have been shared over the years. The other thing, and just going to point out that not here, is one of the things you do all these wonderful events and all this work and everything, and then where is it held? So I would suggest that you either use a binder and a Google Drive to really speak to what you've done, so that people understand how that process occurred, what was needed to do these events, so that that information is there for everyone, so people don't have to repeat, and actually not even repeat, so people also have an understanding as to how these things occurred, so step by step. The other thing is we have School Messenger, and the School Messenger is a one-way communication that you can use to reach out to your parents and caregivers. And finally, when you have your school council email account, that comes with the Microsoft Suite, which includes Teams. And Teams is just like Zoom, so you can connect with your you can use it for school council meetings, like whether you're having for your hybrid or virtual meetings. You can also use it for committee meetings, consultations. You can also use it for workshops, and you know, you could do this in consultation with your principal. And finally, Nancy, that's yours.
Okay, so part of the role of school councils is consultation, and we've talked about it briefly next. So we're going to look at some ways for you to lead consultation. So you can do affinity groups. Affinity groups are groups with a common goal, a commonality about amongst the members. It could be racially based. It could be any number of special interests, whatever. So you can have affinity groups, and in your school, you can go to the affinity groups, consult with them about how they feel about things. Listening circles is when you have a particular question and or a particular topic, and everybody gets together and you're going to speak only to that topic. You're there as a school council to listen, to take notes, to hear what you're hearing from your parents and caregivers. Focus groups, where if you want to know something particular, maybe you're going to just, if you're a elementary school, you're going to do the primary parents first. Then maybe you're going to do the junior, and then the next level. If you're high school, you might want to do it by grade level. You might want to do it by whether their parents, if it's a specialty school, for example, a specialty sports school, you might want to get those parents together, but just focus groups to talk about things. Or you might just want to have, if there's a school event, have a separate room, and parents can come in and you can be asking them questions, either verbally or through surveys, which brings me to surveys, either email or in person. Surveys, anytime you have a school event, I often say you just stand there the old-fashioned way with a clipboard and a piece of paper, and you just take people aside and you just ask them questions. You ask them, or you give them the thing and a pen and ask them to fill it out. You can have issue-based meetings so that you get through the business part of your meeting quickly, and then the rest, maybe you divide into groups and you ask them a question, or as a group you discuss a particular issue. Let's say bullying is something that's come up at your school. Maybe you want to talk about that. And again, as I've said, at school events, have questionnaires, have a time to talk to people at music nights or whatever the school event is. Next.
And just to actually going to speak to one of the things that came up at the PAC conference was those parents that struggle with congregated schools. And one parent pointed out to me that one of the things they do is when they send out the flyers, they tell the bus driver, ask the bus driver if they can speak to the parents when they drop the kids off. So just to remind them, hey, listen, there's the survey in the bag. So it was just like a brilliant idea. I thought, yeah. Okay. Oh,
And of course,
slide.
go to the margins. So the other important way to consult with your parents that you are required to do as a school counselor, you're required by both the Ministry of Education and the TDSB, is the school improvement process, the SIP. Next. So the SIP is a roadmap that sets out the changes that a school needs to make to improve the level of student achievement. It identifies when and how the changes will be made. And as I said, consultation is mandated. There will be a school committee set up by the principal of the teachers. So when we get to the next part, remember the different committees I'm talking about. So every school has to do the SIP. It used to end by October. Now it lasts throughout the year, where they identify issues and try to find ways around it. Next. So there's three ways that we're suggesting that you can consult with your parent and caregiver community. Each way begins with distributing. There is a SIP brochure available through the board. Distributing the SIP brochure to parents and caregivers. You can either send it out or have it available at a school council meeting. And probably at the first or second meeting of the year of your school council meeting, that the principal explain what the SIP process is and how it's going to roll out at your school. Then, what can you do as a school? Well, first, we'll look at the left-hand side, the orange square, is the school council can hold an information night to discuss the SIP. First, the principal would present the current work of the school committee. Remember, I told you there was a committee made up of teachers. What has that committee come up with first? Where are they in the process? What ideas, what thoughts do they have? Then you open it up for ideas from parents and caregivers. You can divide into different tables and they talk as a group and then come back as a group and talk about it. Or you can have the broad, everybody there talking about ideas, either related to what the teachers have already identified as some of the issues or some things that you as parents are hearing are issues. Someone is taking notes, and a report will be written up and given to the principal with recommendations of things that should appear in the SIP. And you can do this, as I said, at a school council meeting. You could have an open forum. You can have listening circles. So it doesn't have to be just one night. You could have different information nights or information sessions. That's the first way. The second way is that the school council forms a committee of interested parents and caregivers. It doesn't have to just be school council members. It can be parents or caregivers that you have identified of having a particular interest in the process at the school. They will be given the brochure that they may on their own distribute to other caregivers in the school. And then creating surveys or listening circles or having meetings, their job is to go out and collect the data that's necessary. What does your community feel is needed to be in the SIP? Always keeping abreast of what's happening with the school's SIP committee and what they're saying. They will then write a report on the data, which will go to the school council, who will then forward it to the principal. Both the two things I've talked about so far have to be considered by the school committee when they are writing their SIP. The final way that we're suggesting is, and there's a lovely spelling mistake, is that the school council selects parents and caregivers. I suggest at least two, probably no more than 3 or 4, who will sit on the school's SIP committee. The reason I'm saying not just one person is because they might feel a little intimidated sitting at the table with all the teachers. If there's 2 or 3 parents, that gives them a little bit more comfort in speaking what they've heard. And you need to ensure that they understand their role and the mandate of the school committee. And they must be available at the times that the school committee meets, which obviously is going to be during the school day. That probably won't be in the evening. And their job is to take things that they've heard at council and from parents and caregivers, take that forward to the school committee, but also to take back to the council what they're hearing at the school committee meetings and get the feedback from the parents there about what they're hearing. So always to keep the council informed of what the school committee is saying and to keep the school committee informed of what the council's feeling. Next. Sorry, I just want to say, it's okay, stay here. The The school is because you are required to have meaningful input into the SIP process, it is no longer enough for the principal to come to a school council meeting at some point in the year and say, yeah, here's what our SIP says, blah, 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 blah. Thanks very much. That's not enough. You have to have meaningful input into it.
The
The
only
other,
thing that also add to that is that the school improvement process is cyclical. It can be updated any point in time as needs arise. So let's just keep that in mind. It's not
yeah.
just you do it once and done for the year. You could just keep adding as things arise. Okay.
The next thing is a school statement of needs. This is the as many of you probably know is where the school council provides their input on what their parent and caregiver community would be looking for should the principal leave and a new principal be brought in. The committee is to be led by the chair, and they are responsible for submitting their SSON to their superintendent in the fall. You do this every year. It doesn't matter if the principal has any plans to leave or not. Sometimes, hopefully, if you like your principal, it won't be needed. But it's important that you look at it every year and decide if there need to be any additions or subtractions. Again, you need to consult with your broader community about what are their priorities for in a principal. And I would say this, Ricardo, I don't know if you agree. Don't come up with a long list of stuff. All right. Don't, when you come up with a long list of stuff, then you're providing an opportunity for the superintendent to say, well, we tried to meet your needs, but we just couldn't. If you come up with 3, 4 things that are really important at your school that the parents feel are really, really important in a leader of their school, then it's incumbent upon the superintendent to listen and to explain to you if the new principal does not meet any of those criteria that you set, why not? Right? When you ask for a long list, you're just opening yourself up to disappointment. The principal and the school staff are not a part of this consultation. They have other ways of providing input. And you might want to consider inviting your superintendent to a school council meeting once you've completed your SSON to discuss the identified priorities and why they're important to you. Next. All right, there are 2 committees that you're required to be a part of. Then I'm talking school committees, not school council committees, school committees. The Safe and Caring School Committee must have school council reps on it. It can be a school council member, or it could be a parent caregiver who is acting on behalf of the school council. Again, you might want to have 2 so that they feel comfortable on that committee. The staffing committee, again, required to have parent input and collaboration. And the school budget committee, schools are encouraged to have a budget committee, and they're encouraged to include school council reps. It's not mandatory. Next. I think this
Okay,
is
so we're going to speak about leading effective engagement. And really, what this is going to be about is the do's and the avoids. So, one of the do's is to build relationships with community and staff and to clarify the role of school council and its approach to engagement. And this, when we're talking about clarifying the role of school council, that is a little bit of a campaign to really reach out to the school community and to staff and advise them as to what the role of school council is and what are your goals for any given year as well. And the other thing is to share school practices openly, acknowledge privilege and power, and explicitly address racism and gender bias in your practices. The other thing is to work effectively with your principal. This is focusing on collaboration rather than control. Build the capacity of your school council members, including training on anti-oppressive practices, engagement resources, and tools to assist student learning and well-being. And I'm also going to include parent learning and well-being. Help the school respond to both needs and wants of the whole school community, not just the dominant voices. And the avoids are being aloof, like thinking you're being, aloof and dismissive, ignoring parents and caregivers at meeting, engaging in color blindness or pretending inequities are not happening, avoiding conversations and about lack of representation. The other thing is dominating or leading meetings or decision making instead of collaborating with the principal. And I'm also going to speak further to this. As the school council chair, your role is facilitation. So you allow you facilitate those meetings. You allow for the process to unfold accordingly. One of the things that I also want that was spoken to at the conference was the issue of people allowing people to speak at the meetings, and that means members of the public. And I totally agree with that. However, when you're having those sort of conversations, you have to have an agenda, and you have to speak through the chair. Otherwise, if you're just speaking out of turn, and that includes members as well, not just the general public, it creates mayhem, and you cannot get through your agenda, and things are missed. So really, create for the co-chairs, and really sit down and create that agenda. Invite your principal to look at your agenda, and don't create a too packed agenda, because if it's too much on your agenda, it's problematic getting through it. And the other thing is you want to give opportunity for community voice. So just have new items at the end so others can speak. Um, the other thing avoid is to ignoring the role of the consultation role, and that's including that of the responsibilities that are inherent in our school improvement process and our school communities. And the other one is just kind of like this kind of like pretense that you're actually doing what is required by only making surface level changes, tweaking around the edges while ignoring marginalized voices and those voices within your own school council that sometimes people tend to ignore because they're not the biggest voice, or you're not you don't value their opinion, or you feel that what, maybe sometimes they're not the best at articulating themselves. But please give those individuals the opportunity. Or sometimes it's just that what, English isn't their first language. Take the opportunity and to listen to what people have to say. Um, Again, we have translation and interpretation services. Please take advantage of those. Oh yes, and right now we just like to do a quick poll. I'm just going to put it up on the screen. Um, could you please just answer the questions on the poll? Can everybody see it? Okay, perfect. Thank you. I'm just going to give it, to 7:33. 3 more minutes. If anybody's having difficulty seeing it, please share that on in the Q&A. Two more minutes. Okay, 1 minute. We'll be ending the poll. Thank you, everyone. We're just closing the poll, and now we'll be moving to the next slide. We get there. Okay. Okay, Nancy, it's yours.
So Dr. Karen Mapp, some of you may have heard of her, is a well-known parent caregiver engagement specialist out of Harvard University. And she reminds us that families, regardless of their race or ethnic identity, educational background, gender, disability, or socioeconomic status, are able to engage in partnerships with school. We need to remember this so we can eliminate the myth of the hard to reach. Next. And also that inclusion is not a program or a set of procedures, it's a mindset. And everything we do must be inclusive, must be transparent, must be accountable, and must be inclusive of our community.
And in saying that, putting that into practice, sometimes we're doing school council meetings in the evenings, and sometimes it's very hard for parents. There may be an opportunity to do a school council meeting first thing in the morning. I've had tea and talks in the morning at schools, and it's a completely different crowd in the evening, but equaling as enriching to me and having a full understanding. And so the other thing too about the school council, I just want to share this, is the importance of having working groups, because these working groups allow for parents to participate. They're not required to come to the meetings, but they can participate when they have opportunity and contribute. The only thing for the working groups, you only have to have one member of school council as part of the working group. They everything they do and they gather, like whether they're doing their an event planning working group, whatever they are, they're working on training for parents. All that information, they just take it to the school. When they've completed their reports, they send it to the school council chair, and then you present it at a school council meeting. So this is just a wonderful opportunity for you to get greater participation in your school council. And now we're moving into the Q&A, and I've been looking at a number of the questions. I'm just going to, um,
Ricardo, I've written some of them down.
okay,
So if I'll just go through some,
okay,
there's
go ahead.
one there, and then there's a couple that I think that only you can answer. The civil discourse presentation from a week or so ago, is it up on YouTube?
No, that is not up on, it will be up on YouTube. This is another one where, again, there's information that they have to look at to ensure that no personal information
This
is
stuff is
being
up.
shared.
Okay.
Yeah.
So there was a question about communicating with parents, about listening, about how to communicate effectively in it when there's issues and things. So I would advise all of you to keep your eye on the YouTube site. The civil discourse session that was made available to parents a couple of weeks ago was fantastic. I learned a lot. So just watch out for that civil discourse. There was a question of the difference between the SIP and the SSON. Okay, so the I should have said this at the time. The mandate for school councils is to work to achieve student achievement, to improve student achievement, and to make the system accountable to parents and caregivers. Those are your two main mandates. So the SIP answers to a large extent, the SIP is connected with the student achievement part. So the SIP is looking at what are they doing at the school right now to help their kids achieve in learning and curriculum, and what could they do better? What's hindering it? It might not always be academic issues. There might be things around bullying, any number of things, but it's what is helping and hindering learning at the school. That's what the SIP is. The SSON is looking at what qualities are parents and caregivers at the school looking for in their leader, in their principal or vice principal. As I said, three or four things that are really, really important to have in a principal at that school. So that's that. I wrote down something. Just a reminder, this wasn't a question, but just a reminder that at school council meetings, personal issues cannot be brought to the floor of the school of the meeting. So my child is being bullied in her classroom, and I'm really upset about it. I cannot come to a school council and say, yes, in Mr. X's classroom, there's a lot of bullying going on and my daughter's being bullied. What you can do is come to the school council meeting and say, I would like to talk about bullying in the school, how it's being identified and how it's being remedied. So you can talk about the broader issue, just not personal issues. Um, just a reminder from Crystal, thank you, Crystal, that PIAC offers a lot of resources. It's available on their page. Um, and Crystal, maybe you could put it in Q&A because I should have looked it up. I can't remember just at the moment
Yeah.
what
Well,
the PIAC.
you could look at Toronto PIAC. Just
Toronto,
Google
just look,
Toronto
yeah,
PIAC.
just Google Toronto PIAC and it'll come up. And there was a question, these are for
Well,
you,
actually,
Ricardo.
sorry, Nancy. I'm just going because we keep saying Toronto PIAC, and maybe I'm just going to say the spell it out. PIAC is PIAC. Yeah,
Yes, thank you.
thank you.
Thank you. Um, Maybe you could respond to these two questions. There was a question about being able to get the TDSB school council email. They're having trouble. I don't know. You're supposed to have your principal put a ticket in with IT, but if you could answer that.
So I'm going to speak to that because I did see
Yeah.
that um, that question. And one of the things that happens here's the process is that the principal you provide the principal with your personal email, and the principal sends that personal email to IT, and IT then generates a school council email address and then shares that with the co-chair. So what has happened in the past that sometimes causes this not to occur is that the email addresses are incorrect. And then if an incorrect email address is received, then you, of course, are not going to get that email from IT. There's also issues in terms of maybe it wasn't submitted or maybe it was missed. Either way, my suggestion is that you either send me an email, I put my email address, or you go to this um, TDSB School Council webpage. There is a service request form that you can fill out, and we'll address that on your behalf. And please do that sooner than later because we're already in February, and you don't have that's a real problem. Um, okay.
The in the chat, both Ricardo and I put the link to the YouTube channel. You will find previous webinars that we've done in the last couple of years. You will also find the civil discourse presentation when it's up. So I've provided you with the link. There've been a couple of questions about involving, how do you get parents to be involved? And that's a really tough question. Um, as as Dr. Constantino said, and I said the thing, you have to make things relevant to them. And part of it is talking to the parents and asking them what they need. Um, we're going to provide our emails at the end. I have a sample survey that if you write to me, I'm happy to send out to you. You can't use it. You have to make your own. But you can look at what I did and pick and choose what questions you like. But asking the parents in a survey, um, talking to them at the kindergarten door, talking to them at the doors when they pick up their kids. What sort of things do they need to know to help support their kids? What don't they understand what's happening at the school, especially if a school with a heavy newcomer immigrant population? Most of those parents probably experience a different education system than we do. And listen, the education system I went to here is different from the one it is now. So it's about helping them to understand the system and what can they do to support that. If we ask our parents questions and we don't provide them with answers, they're going to stop asking questions and they're not going to come. So it's a slow build. What I would suggest to you, we're February 10th. Ask yourself, as a council, where would we like to be by the middle of April? What one thing would we like to have done, or what one improvement would we like to have made by the middle of April? And then work on that. And then in April, what do we want to do? Where do we want to be by the end of the school year? And then work on that. You're all volunteers. You don't have tons and tons of time to do things. So take it slow. Think about what's missing. Do we just need to talk to our parents? Is that what we need to do? And then there was a question from somebody who didn't have a school council yet. I would start with a conversation. Ricardo, you might, I'm sure you'll want to add, but I would start with a conversation with my principal because it's the principal's responsibility to ensure that a school's council exists at the school. And what's the problem? Either there never was one and the school community isn't used to that, or there were problems in the past. And I apologize, I don't remember whether it was a high school or
Yeah, it was a
it's a
secondary school
secondary
that they're
school. Yeah.
speaking to.
It's
Yeah,
really hard. It's really hard at a secondary school. It's really hard. So, Ricardo, we're
okay, so
into
one of the things
February.
that when I saw the question that came to mind is what, you know what, if you want to take the example from news media, what do? They hit an issue that is actually important to individuals. They say, and they start to have that discussions around that. So whether it's maybe improving the schoolyard, maybe there's an issue at the school, and really saying that this is something that we want to start addressing. that's one of the one way. Again, the other thing with secondary schools is they also have a student council, and I'd reach out to them to see what what are their concerns, and kind of bounce off that to try and reach out to the school community. The problem with high school and it is that parents seem to feel that in high school they there's not a need for their engagement. And I'm going to flip on that and say, yeah, there's a huge need for those engagement, and speak to that fact as to how uh, it is so important for parents to be engaged at the critical years of a child's being, and really being there to support their well-being, because kids are falling through the cracks. Things are happening. We're still feeling impacts of COVID, and really starting to say to them, like, listen, these are times, and actually being very transparent as to things that you've already seen and things that you've heard from other parents, and really putting it to the forefront. Um, the and the really and the other thing is really taking advantage, because there's few opportunities, because parents aren't dropping their kids off at school. So, and sending letters home, I, and backpacks. Well, you know what, you know where those go. So, it's just kind of like, parent parent night, engaging um, when they're transitioning, because there's schools that have transition night from grade 8 to 9. Going to those meetings, speaking to school council. So if there's a middle school, you go to the middle school, and you speak to those parents, and also just ensure that that school council is being mentioned in a newsletter, either a need for the school council, speaking to those issues I said before. And the other thing is to ensure that, um, you know what, that your principal is behind you on this. Um, the thing about school councils is not something like we want to one. It's actually mandated under Regulation 612 that all schools must have a school council. And a school council, and I'm just going to clarify what a school council means. A school council cannot be less than 5 people. So that would be a secretary, treasurer, um, co-chair, and 2 members or 2 co-chairs. So those are that is what the makeup of a school council is. The other thing is, in order for school for you to access the school council funds, which is the $500 plus $1.25 per student, you must have a school council, because the school council must be signatory on those funds. So that would be another encouragement as to those opportunities that you can, um, to encourage people to be involved. And it's also, and the other thing too, when I'm going back to the parent um, piece, it's also when you're having workshops to help parents deal with those very things that many of us did or are experiencing with a teenage child. If you provide those sort of things, to those sort of workshops for people to take those opportunities, you'll start to see that engagement that you want. And I know it's a very difficult process, and it can be frustrating, especially when you're doing it alone in the beginning, but just building that momentum.
I was going to add that for high school is really hard, even if you've had one going. So, Courtney, all all credit to you for trying. Get some help, get a couple other parents that you might know there, and get some help going here. And high schools have lots of events, music nights, arts nights, events going on. Just again, survey parents, ask what they need, ask what's going on. And I think Ricardo had a really good idea. Offer an information night where they can come and hear maybe a speaker. Speaker has to be on either, if it's an outside speaker, it has to be approved on the vendor list, or the principal has to verify them. But you can always get speakers from the board who will come in free. And there's lots of experts at the board to come and talk about things that you have heard from parents that they want to hear. I know of a high school in Scarborough, that they decided to do an event on a Saturday. They called it Parent University, and they had their teachers were doing presentations at each of the things. The first year, I think they had something like 25, 50 people out. Bless them, they knew it was a good idea, so they kept going. By the third or fourth year, they were getting a couple of hundred people out. So, you're going to try things, all of you, high school, elementary school, middle school, you're going to try stuff and it might not be successful. But so you stop and think, was it a good idea? If the answer is yes, then how can we massage it so that it'll work better the next time? And we're going to keep going and we're going to keep building. Courtney, you're in others, you're in a slow building process. Just keep going. Ricardo and I are always here to answer questions and help you out.
I'm just going to look at the comment from Vim, and and yes, because I do acknowledge that there are huge communication gaps at the board. Um, and this is not for the lack of trying. Um, the reality is the best way of communicating with parents now is via text. We don't have that in place yet. We are moving towards having that opportunity. We do use um, send out emails. Emails get buried. So, we are, even with my department now, we are moving towards, Instagram, and we have our own Facebook site. So these are our ways. But again, there's many of those out there. So we are using, trying to improve our communication and how we communicate. So the other thing, because one of the things that I don't know if he's hinting at, is how we reach out to people. We have a tendency to reach out usually in English. A lot of our parents, that isn't their first language, so we really have to work towards being able to address those issues. The good thing, or maybe not so good thing, is we are going to be further integrating AI, and AI will allow that process for those translations to occur. So yes, yeah, it's agreed, and we acknowledge that, and we want to. And then the other thing, that in terms of the volunteering, like we have the vulnerable sector check, and some parents, as a result of that, have causes delays. I'm just going to say, I know it is a process, but it's required. We need to ensure the safety of our students. So although these processes take time, um, the the goal and the intention is to ensure the safety of our students, and actually sometimes parents and caregivers and staff as well. So there's a necessity for those things. Yeah.
Ricardo, we've kept these wonderful volunteers a long time, and perhaps we should thank
Yes,
them
start
and say
wrapping up.
good night.
Already, yes. So what I want, there's a QR code here as well. Like I said, you can always just Google TDSB School Council. You can reach our school council webpage through the QR code. And I'm just going to now move to the next slide. And oh, whoa, what happened here? So there's our contact information. Oh, maybe you want to type your email in
I
the
put my email in the chat, but it's at the bottom of the page here.
okay, so you know what? I will move it again and bring it forward. And paste. And there's Nancy's email address with equal step. And as well as my phone number. I encourage you to keep in touch, reach out to us, provide us with feedback. And I also would like feedback in terms of our school council page, what you're seeing, what you're not seeing, what you'd like to see. That would also be helpful because then we can help others in terms of that information that is required. With this, I just want to thank you all for participating. This will be up on our YouTube channel that we've shared in our in the chat, but it's also again all you have to do is um, go Google PCEO YouTube, and it'll come up as well. So yeah, I thank you for all for your participation, and I we are having another presentation on February 25th. So please sign up for that on our school council web workshop page. Yeah, and everyone have a wonderful night. And sure Nancy has something to say as well.
Just thank you. Thank you. Thank you for all of the work you do for your schools, for your children, for your community, for your staff. It's so important. Thank you.
Thank you. Everyone have a great night.
Good night.
Bye bye.